Hello and welcome to a video demonstration of Riven OCR. If you're not familiar with what OCR means, OCR stands for Optical Character Recognition. It's a technology that's used to extract text out of an image. And so traditionally, we're talking about extracting text from scans of pages of books. So we transform those physical books into digital books that you can search or you can share online. But what we're going to do is we're going to extract text out of a Riven, and we're going to use that text to post the Riven online. So let's go ahead and get started. First thing we have to do is to get a Riven into Riven OCR, and there's two ways to do that. The first way is from Warframe itself. So if we go to Warframe, we see that we're disconnected from the chat server for the millionth time, but we also see that we have a link here to the Nami Solo Visinant. I'm going to click that link, and I'm going to hit Control-Shift-B. That's a shortcut that's registered to Riven OCR that tells it to take a screenshot. So it's taking a screenshot. When I Alt-Tab out, it's already done its processing, and it's shown us on this right panel all the values that it's extracted out of this Riven. As a bonus, if you take a look at our hard drive, it has also saved a copy of that image as a file on our hard drive, and it's named it after the Riven itself. So Nami Solo Visinant.ping, we open it up. That's the Riven we just took a screenshot of. Great. So let's go back to Riven OCR. And we see that, it's pretty cool. It's great that I was able to extract all this information out of the Riven, but that's not that useful by itself. So let's click this button here, post to riven.market. I wonder what that does. I bet it opens up its own browser and fills in all these values onto riven.market, such that all we have to do is to verify that it posted correctly. Let's take a look. Nami Solo Visinant, melee damage, slide attack, finisher, Madurai, MR16, 8 rolls. Looks good to me. Now the one thing that Riven OCR cannot do is price my Riven for me. So I'm going to say that this is an 85 plat value Riven. Hit sell, and that's it. We posted the Riven, boys. Now let's go to Warframe.market and post it there. Alright, Nami Solo Visinant, looks like the values are correct. Polarity is correct. I'm going to scroll down, hit next, sell, 85. That is all there is to it. Now, I told you there was an alternate way to get Rivens into Riven OCR, and that is with this load button. So I'm going to click the load button. I'm going to click the datat. That's how long it takes to process a Riven. And now, let's move this to the side. Let's go ahead and post this Riven. Again, important to always compare to make sure that everything was posted correctly, read correctly. Don't want angry customers coming after you saying that you were trying to scam them with the wrong values. But everything looks good. And so I'm going to click next. I'm going to say 65 plat, sell. Okay, and finally, let's post this to Warframe.market as well. It opens up Warframe.market, fills everything in for me. All I have to do is the comparison to make sure everything's correct. Looks good. We're going to do 65 plat here as well. Okay, and so we just posted two Rivens to Riven.market and Warframe.market very quickly and very easily. Much easier than doing the standard way of typing every value in by myself. So I think that's a pretty good demonstration of Riven OCR. Now I want to get into some of the updates that I've added to Riven OCR since I initially posted about this on the Warframe forums. If you want to see that post, go ahead and click the link that's in the description below. It has a pretty detailed breakdown of everything that went into making Riven OCR. But the thing that people said they really wanted to see was magnitudes. Now, if you don't know, every one of these stats, toxin, initial combo, range, not only was the statistic itself, was the stat itself randomly generated. It could have been cold damage or range, but they chose toxin. But also this value to the left is also clearly randomly generated. And so to do that, what they do is they generate a magnitude, and that magnitude is a value between 90 and 110 that is multiplied with according to a whole bunch of other factors, but as a result, it creates this value. So if you know all these other values, you can go back and you can figure out what the magnitude was, and we can see just how strong of a roll each one of these individual attributes got when this ribbon was rolled. So if we take a look here, we have what the magnitudes are. Now magnitude, like I said, it's a 90% to 110% roll, but I don't really like that range. That's kind of a weird range to work with. It's quite awkward. So what I do is I convert that over to a scale of 0 to 100, meaning that 100 would be a perfect roll, a 0 would be a terrible, awful, the worst roll, and a 50 is a mediocre, perfectly average roll. So what we see here is we have a 90, which is pretty well above average. That's in the top 10 percentile of all toxin rolls you can get for a DATOT. Alternatively, you can see this range, and we've rolled a 42. That's 42 out of 100, which means it's a little bit below average in terms of the possible rolls you could have gotten for a range on a DATOT. So that's how that works. We also see that this is all color-coded. So, green represents a good roll, yellow represents a mediocre roll, and red would represent a very poor roll. So the next thing that we did was get into error correction, and this is where I'm going to get into a little more of how Riven OCR actually works. Let's load a Riven that I noted needed some error correction. So I'm going to open up this Exergis, Acritas? Acriata. Okay, the Exergis Acriata. Now if you look at this panel on the right, it looks like everything parsed just fine. It looks like everything works, but I'm going to open this up. This is the raw output. What's raw output mean? Well, we ran this OCR we ran the OCR procedure on this Riven, and that Riven produced a string, and that string got passed to a parsing engine, which actually went and extracted out all these values. And so what this raw output is this is the actual output that we got after running OCR, but before doing the formal parsing of that string to get all those values into their places. So I'm going to just copy this string here, and we see we have the Exergis Acriata, no problem. 108.2 wait, this isn't critical damage, this is critical damage T. Where did this T come from? Well, let's take a look. See this weird black and white ribbon here? This is a temporary file that we create to help out those Riven OCR routines to do their parsing. Remember, OCR is optimized for black text on a white background because it's meant to be scanning books and all those kinds of publications. So that's where it works best. However, when I tried to help OCR out by blanking out all this Riven and turning it into a black and white image, I cut off this E here. And that is why the OCR engine didn't quite read that E correctly. But that's okay. And you know why? Because Riven OCR knows all the possible outputs, all the possible things that these Rivens can be. So damage, multi-shot, critical damage, recoil, all those values, it already knows. And so if it gets bad output in these fields, like critical damage T, it can do comparisons and figure out, okay, well the closest one that it could have possibly been is critical damage, and so that's what we're just going to say that it was. So in that way we can auto-correct a lot of the fields that might get misread by the OCR. However, we can't do it with all of them, and so I'm going to give you an example of that. Let's look at our Zenister here. With Zenister, we see that we have all the fields read correctly, but we have a value, an actual Riven attribute value that was misread. So what happened here? Well, first off, conveniently, it flagged it for us. It gave us a purple magnitude, and it says error. That error means, hey, this field, I don't think we read it correctly. You might want to pay some attention to this. So what happened? Well, let's look at the raw output. Again, that raw output is what did the OCR scan give for this Riven. Take a look at that. Let's clean this up a little bit. Okay. Zenister, accurate for Theta, no problems here, but if we look at the attribute at question that was problematic, we get plus G63.2. So what happened? It looked at the 63.2 and it looked at that 6, and it said, well, I don't know if that's a G or a 6. So I tell you what, I'm just going to give you both of those. And then my routines looked at that G and said, okay, well, we're talking about this has to be a number, and it was interpreted as a G. And so clearly it probably meant a 6, right? So it automatically changed that G over to a 6. And then we got 663.2 heavy attack efficiency. Well, in order to produce 663.2 heavy attack efficiency, I'm going to click over to the refined output to get the magnitude. We would have needed a 1094% magnitude, which is way above the 110% cap that you can have on a magnitude. And so Riven OCR was able to detect that it was not able to read that value correctly, flag it, and say, hey, pay attention to this. I don't think it's right. Now, luckily, one of the things that we did in this update was the ability to, make this field editable. So I'm going to remove this, 63. You can fix it by hand. And now when I click post to riven.market, get all this good stuff out of the way, we see that we have the valid 63.2% melee heavy attack. Same thing. So that's the second thing we've done, is the capacity to correct anything that Riven OCR misinterprets when it comes to these values. The final thing we've done, let's load this guy here. What a mess. So you see, when I loaded this Riven, it wasn't able to do anything at all. Like, most of these fields just didn't get parsed at all. Now, why is that? Well, the one thing that we do, and this gets kind of complicated in terms of the actual how we parse the string, but I do require an exact match on this field here, the Riven suffix. So when we look at our raw output, again, what that OCR engine gave us to work with, we'll put it in under a microscope, clean it up a little bit. We have the Cybris, that part read correctly, Cy-Wizicron. Wizicron, not Visicron. And as a result, this wasn't an exact match, and so Riven OCR wasn't able to parse this Riven properly, and that's the end of everything. However, we do have a solution. We implemented a way to help out Riven OCR a little bit. So when I click this load button, we have this dialog now. Riven OCR is having trouble processing this. Please manually enter the Riven name. So I'm going to do that. It's a Cybris Cy-Visicron. Hit OK. And now it's able to parse the Riven successfully. Let's try posting this to Warframe.market. Looks good. So it's a perfectly valid Riven to post now. Everything's wonderful. Now as a bonus, I'm going to load a different Riven really quick. And we're going to go back to that Riven. Notice how it's no longer new Riven.ping, it is now the Cybris Cy-Visicron.ping. When I load that open, we didn't get a prompt. It didn't need a prompt anymore to be able to parse this Riven. Even though we still have it detected as the Cybris Cy-Wizicron, we don't need to tell it anymore. Why? Well, because it's able to extract that information from the file name. The file name is the Riven name, and that's the thing that it was having trouble with. So Riven OCR is just it. So basically what that means is you only ever have to issue a correction once, and then Riven OCR will basically remember that correction. Okay, so that's about all there is to it. In this video, we showed you a quick demonstration of Riven OCR and how everything works. And we also introduced some of the latest updates, which include the magnitude, these values here, as well as error detection and correction for as many fields as we can get. So basically any field will either get auto-corrected, or it has mechanisms for you to manually correct it if the OCR does fail, which is fairly rare. I would say it's able to scan most Rivens, probably about 98% of Rivens, completely successfully on its own. But for those situations that you need to issue a correction, you're able to do it, and then post your Rivens online. So if you have any questions or comments about Riven OCR, you can post them here in this video, or you can go to the thread on the Warframe forums that I have linked in the description below. Thanks for visiting. Have a great day.